Lisa Domican, and I have never presented in such a big long room. I feel like I should have a football and we should be kicking it around and not sitting here listening to me talk. So feel free to bunch up, because I am a prop comic. I do have a few little things to show, or if you are more comfortable after I finish speaking, stand back a bit. Come up and talk to me and I'll give you a business card and show you a few bits. Oh, we're off air. See, I wiggle too much. Okay. No, I'm not connected. I was connected, wasn't I? Okay, there's irony for you. Okay, as hinted in the introduction, I'm the mother of 2 autistic children. I have a son and a daughter. My son is almost 14, and my daughter, who's called Grace, is 12. And the reason I came to this was because I could see a need and I had an experience. I'm not necessarily a technical person, but I did have some understanding of what was needed. Now, my belief is that technology should serve us. It's not up to us to learn all about the technology. The technology should be coming to us and helping us. So my belief is that it should be possible for everybody to be able to say what they want. And that's what I'm setting out to get to. Now, when people have children with autism, often they don't realise that it's a sensory disability. It's that everything they hear, see, touch, taste, smell is distorted. So they're not necessarily having an intellectual disability, it's just very hard for them to learn. And almost half of all the people with autism will have a difficulty learning to talk because of that sensory distortion. However, they do communicate. Often, this is what I call robot hands. They'll start by leading people around, which is nice. Then if they don't want something, they might find another way, and I think you can tell where that pastor was about to go. More leading. This is something I want you to do something for me. It seems nice at first, but it's very intense if you're a parent and you're constantly being dragged around the house just so that you can work out what your child wants. Or they get it themselves. Now she's standing in front of the microwave. 5 minutes later, she was up on the hob. Great way to get people's attention. I think if someone's not listening to you, or a bite, and it gets them very quickly. Now this little guy has obviously had enough. He's at Euro Disney. He's had too much going on. So how can we prompt people who appear to not be able to imitate what we're saying? We can't put air through their lungs and make a word and reward them for making a word. We can hold their hand and teach them to do a sign, which is great. It's really portable, but unfortunately not everyone in their community is going to understand that sign, as we've learned. So they go back to their negative behaviour, because that works faster. We can also use pictures. And that's where I've come from. I worked very hard on introducing a picture exchange communication system for both my children to learn to talk. Now I'll just show you my screensaver here. That is a PECS book, which is Picture Exchange Communication System. My son learnt to do this at the age of 4 in his primary school, and he was using those pictures for about 3 months. And just by handing over a picture and getting a cookie, he learnt to say cookie, and eventually we stopped using the pictures and he could talk. That's actually Gracie's book. I introduced the same system to her. She wasn't imitating, but she was certainly handing over the pictures, and 6 years later she had 400 pictures in that book. So this is where the props come in. Her book was that big, okay? which is okay in a therapeutic or educational context, but it's not very discreet when you're going shopping or you're going out into the community. It's also okay if you're 3 or 4, but it's different if you're 17 and you're walking around carrying this giant book. However, in order to be understood wherever she went, she needed all those pictures. Now, the other part of this is ethical. She relies on me, her carer, to make those pictures for her, to print them off a CD-ROM, or to take a photo, print the photo, laminate the photo, Velcro the photo, and get it into the book. So it's really about me observing her. Now, I'm quite an obsessive person. I was very committed to this, and I put a lot of energy into trying to make sure she always had her pictures. But often that energy wanes. And what often happens is that this loses its value because the pictures don't have any meaning anymore, but this does. So when you're 17 and someone puts milky, cold tea in front of you, and you don't want it, but you don't have any way of asking for what you want, you probably throw the tea at that person until they get the idea. That's where you find the exclusion starts to happen. Oh, this person is uncontrollable. They're always acting up. They're too hard to control. They need to be put away in a respite centre or a residential, and no one can really manage them. And I really didn't want that for my daughter. But at the same time, this was getting a bit tired. So often these settings have lots of pictures, but I thought it might be easier to put them onto a device. Now, as I said, I'm not a technical person. This inspiration came from looking out the window of a bus and seeing an ad for iPhone. At that time, iPhone had just arrived in Ireland, and the pictures on the front of the screen reminded me of Gracie's picture book. It was only when I got hold of a phone that I found out that there was this thing called an app. Now, an app is just a little teeny computer program. I'm holding up my hands as if you can see a computer program that fits into a little file that can go onto one of these devices. Now, the devices that I used, very intuitively it has to be said, because my daughter was able to use it the second time I showed her, is the iPhone. But you can also do all of this stuff on an iPad, which is here right now, and I'll hold it up at the end. I should have brought 2. Or an iPod. You probably find that half the teenagers in Ireland have one of these. They've been around playing music now for 5 years. So my inspiration came from knowing about the autism and the disability and the communication. I didn't have to have a technical background to realise it was very, very easy to use this. Now you can see which one she prefers. I was trying to get her to pose for this photo to get her to use that picture exchange system. No, I'm going to get this because I know I can get exactly what I want. The other thing that we learned when I started, I'll just skip through all this stuff, using this device was that it had great flexibility for the user. Now, I was able to put all her pictures onto it, but as I said, I'm always interpreting on Gracie's behalf. This is what she might want. This is what she might be interested in. And after she'd made a request for something, or she'd grabbed it, I was holding up the device to take a photograph. Now, I can show you on the spot how to do that. This is a front-facing camera, so I'm going to jump out the way. But every device now has one of these cameras. So you're in a shop, they reach for something. In this case, you can see it's a little Thomas train. You know they want it. So straight away, they can make a sentence, I want Thomas. They can also make a syntax sentence, semantic sentence, that's the word, where they can discriminate what they want with regards to Thomas. So I want the Thomas DVD. Now that was all very well. I caught Gracie holding up the device to use the camera independently, and she was only 8, so I thought, okay, we'll put the camera into the app, but what if you don't have access to the item? What if you are looking for something that just isn't available, but you can't communicate it? Well, the great thing about these devices is that they are connected to the internet. If you can see in that top corner there, the o2.ie, I have it connected to the wireless in this building. So wherever I'm in this building, I have access to the internet. If I was outside the building, I would be using the 3G mobile networks. Again, in the iPhone and in the iPad 3G, this is built in. This is not a special extra thing. So again, if presented, and I have to say I did get a really nice cup of tea, but for the sake of it, if I was being offered milky tea and I didn't want it, I'm sitting there in my unit waiting for someone to bring me something that I really like. Well, I can just type into a search engine, in this case I'm using Starbucks, I want an espresso macchiato. I just press and hold, save that image, I go back to the app, and it's very important to understand that this can be done by the user. They're not waiting for you to look it up, they're not waiting for you to work out what they want. They can go into there, grab that picture, and, as I wanted to at 2 o'clock today, request exactly what they want. This gives access to the entire World Wide Web to the person with a disability. Now, I realise that we're talking about mixed disabilities here. So my app was developed specifically with autism in mind. That's my speciality. However, since I developed it, I have been approached by a lot of people with different disabilities, brain injury, people who have had a stroke, people who've had cerebral palsy. As long as they have the motility to operate the screen, they can use this app. If they don't have the motility, there are a range of extra devices, and I will be sitting down with Assistive Tech Lady afterwards to talk about the switches, the pointing devices, the eye gaze devices, and the different apps that suit different disabilities. Also, within these devices, and as of yesterday, they now have speech to text. Volume, please.
I want, back, button. Toolbar button, colors, button. That, per.
That's just built into every device. They also look really cool. Now, the alternative before Grace app was a device that was about that big to carry around. Not very cool, not very groovy, and also quite heavy. It was also, excuse me, bloody expensive. 10 grand. You can get an iPad for 500 euros. You can put apps on for less than 200 euros. If you're working in a centre, you buy one app, you can put it on 5 devices. The flexibility is incredible. And they're cool. For Autism World, we're talking about heavy-duty covers because we want these guys to be able to bounce and survive. But you can also get stands for putting them on a chair. As I said, it's all, the technology's there, it's ready, and it just has to be adapted by you, the user, to what your individual need is. It is very, very doable. The other thing to point out is that you will be able to multiply how effective your assistive tech grants are. If you go from spending $10,000 on one very inflexible device to spending the same amount of money, you've practically got 15 devices. You've also got flexibility within the apps to suit differing needs. People develop all the time. Once they get good at one thing, they could try another. If the first thing doesn't work, then you can use a simpler app. And you have it all right there on the device. You just have to type in, you see in that top corner I typed in autism. My little product is competing with 450 other autism apps. If you type in cerebral palsy, you'll get a similar number. And they are being developed all the time. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm not used to shutting up this quickly, and I got jealous because I saw these ladies all had a video. So I'll finish with this video and then I'll open the floor to questions. 1 minute.
Grace App for Autism, produced by Grace App Communications, Ireland. Help your child. The Grace App for Autism serves as a superb example of real-life benefits that mobile technologies can bring to learning. Grace helps autistic and other children with special needs to communicate effectively. It can be used by schools and parents alike. The application is easily customized, allowing users to personalize the communication with each individual child. It also makes learning more fun and allows children to contribute. The beauty of the Grace app is that understanding of the real needs of autistic children helps to increase communication opportunities. Mobile builds trust.
That's it.